Hi everyone and welcome to a new video. This is gonna be something different compared to what you may have seen in other videos. And in today's video, we are gonna be taking a look to the differences between my most famous GT-RC modular chassis. Remember that this was released on MakerWorld some few months ago, and some people love it and some others criticize it because it was kind of painful for some people to build this thing. And even though it's some people was able to build it, but then they got to a point where they can't use it, so it was time to improve this chassis. In this video, we're going to be taking a look to all the main things that I have changed for the newer version, the V10, that you can see right here. So we're going to be taking a look step by step to what things I have changed and improved on this new chassis to make it more easy to assemble and also to make it more reliable when it comes to when to use it. So let's start. As said, this is V10 of the GT-RCS chassis. Remember that this chassis is using Cyberbrick components from Bamboo Lab or Maker Supply, MakerWorld, however you want to call it. And so this is a very affordable RC chassis and compared to all the ones. But not only that, this is supposed to be, or it was meant to be, a simple and easy chassis, even though it's quite complex when it comes to how it was designed and built. So as said, let's go step by step, taking a look to everything. So the first thing that we can see in the chassis is that first, the V-rings. The V-rings, as you can see, these are exposed, and this was kind of okay for the first time for this chassis, but there were some few problems. When you install a rim on this axis, on this center hub, sometimes when you have the rim on it and you wanted to take off the rim, this axis will just come out, and that's the first thing. But also there's another thing. Look at how much wobble we have and how much play we have on this entire suspension geometry. This is ridiculous. And so how I fix this into the new version? Well, as you can see, now everything it's closed. Now you can see the V-rings. This not only won't allow to the center half to come out from its housing, but also it will keep it out of dust and mud and or even water and some kind, those kind of stuffs. So another thing, as you can see, in the entire chassis, all the tolerances has been revised, and so check at the play right now. In fact, this is not play. Now it's acting on the suspension, this movement. And as you can see, if I release it, it goes back into the position. Something which, by the way, didn't happen on the V1. As you can see, that is not rebound, that is entirely free, and this is not how a suspension should behave. Even something is worth mentioning. When it comes to the suspension of this chassis, I'm using the same springs that come with the Cyberbrick kit, and these springs are 0.6 in Y diameter, and I should suggest you to buy some 0.9 or 0.8 wire diameter springs for the suspension. They will behave better. And even as you can see right here, this spring retainer, I don't know if it can be seen, the golden part right there, that spring retainer has two positions, and it's been placed right now on the top position. So that means that it's on the hardest position of the suspension. And the thing is that you can place it on the lower part of that is made for the retainer, but as said, these springs are very weak, and I suggest you to place it on the top part. And that's another thing that also has been improved. The suspension, the coilovers. Previously, with this model, I think it can be better seen on the rear ones. On this model, I don't know if you can see it, but we had an outer spring and an inner spring that goes around the rod of the coilover. And the thing is that this system, this design is way much harder. And as you can see, here is reacting quite well and quite strong, and it's how it's supposed to behave. But there were some cases, like for example in this front one, that as you can see is stuck, and that's why it's not working, because the inner spring is interacting with the dynamic of the coilover, and so the spring is not moving a single inch because it's locked by the inner spring. This was a way much complex design, and so that's why I end up into this another design where now everything has been simplified, and well, it can be better seen on this version right through here. And so again, it's still reactive, but not as much. And as you can see, there's much compression, but the whole thing has been simplified. As said, here you can take a deeper close look between the two springs. And I mean, I would love to go back into design, into the big one, and make this suspension, this design. But as said, there were some cases where the suspension got stuck. But in the future, maybe Maker Supply will be releasing a spring with this size and with an increased wire diameter. And as soon as they release it, I will be installing them on the new V1. But for now, this new design, even though it has a more compressed spring, it's quite acting well. It's more than enough to me, and for this chassis mainly, because one of the first things that you need to know is that this chassis only reached a top speed of 6 to 80 kilometers per hour thanks to these N20 400 RPM motors. Another thing worth saying is that probably Maker Supply or Bambu Lab will be releasing better engines. I don't know when, I don't know if this is about to come soon, but it's highly probable as far by what I know now. And so as soon as they release new motors, if they do, then I will be installing them on this chassis, and probably higher speeds will be reached. But for now, that's what we have. And so as said, and relating the engine speed with the suspensions, we don't need better suspensions than this for a chassis that only runs at 6 to 8 kilometers per hour. So next thing, more things that we need to talk about. Well, as you can see, we have new locking systems. These new locking systems are entirely taken from the GT-RCR chassis. Remember that when I released this chassis, we have the GT-RCS, the V1, and also we have the GT-RCR, which I have over here. And so this is the GT-RCR. This is the, in quotes, the same chassis. In fact, these are the same. If you take a look to the dimensions of these two chassis, they are the same because they were designed to fit in all of the cars in the same way with the same modular systems. And so what I was saying, by the way, this is the V1 of the GT-RCR chassis, and I'm also working on the V1.1 with different suspensions because these ones didn't behave like they should. In fact, they didn't behave in this moment right now. And I play with this chassis with not much problems, but some things also had to be redesigned for this one. And as said, I have changed that, and I will be releasing the V1.1 soon. In fact, I will show it to you guys. This is the V1.1 for the GT-RCR chassis, and as you can see, the suspensions displacement has changed also. And now, as you can see, in this one didn't work, but on this one, as you can see, now the suspensions work. They behave like they should. Not only the rear ones, but also the front ones. There's still some job that there's needed to be done, but yeah, it's going quite well. And what I was telling you is that this chassis had these locking systems, as you can see, to prevent that these arms don't skip like it's happening right here, right now. The system is closed, now it's open, and now it's moving, as you can see. But sometimes when the system was closed, we can see that you can even move it. This is why I created these locking systems for this chassis. The reason for that I only apply these systems for this one is because this chassis can reach 80 kilometers per hour. And so, because the speed on this one wasn't as much good, then I didn't found interesting or needed to play these locking systems right here or here. So, but at the end of the time after using this chassis, I found that sometimes when you wanted to take out a rim or place it into its center hub, you will find that the same, that sometimes it skips, and I didn't want that. So that's why on the V1.1 now we have these locking systems, and now under no single condition it's possible to move these arms. Now it's entirely locked in place. So we have that for all the front top arms, the same thing on the bottom ones. We also have the same on the rear ones. Again, this part, it's been taken directly from the GTR-CR chassis, as you can see. This was something that wasn't available on the V1 of the GTR CS chassis. As you can see, we didn't have lock, and there were some circumstances, and there were some conditions where again these arms move and change its width or even the camber, and that's something that you don't want when you are driving or even when you are placing rims on it. So now we have these locking systems again, and the same for the rear top ones. We have these locking systems, and now it doesn't move. And talking about locking systems, there's one more thing that I have implemented on this chassis, which is these locking systems now on the steering arms. These are now way much easier to unlock, as you can see, and now you can see all the dents moving, and you can place the position easily with no single problem. And this was something that you can't do. And this was something that in the case of the V1, you can't do that, because you have to take off this thing right here. You have to pull it off. You have to move this steering manually. You have to take this out, which was quite complicated in some cases. As you can see, it's quite hard. Sometimes it is not even coming off. And so that was one thing that I had to redesign. Now, once you have it off, you can even lose it, and then you have to manually place this part in position, don't let it move, and then place again this part. And as you can see, this process was back then way much more complicated and not much natural, let's say. And as you can see, it's getting complicated. In fact, I'm not gonna plug it in. So that was one thing. That is one thing that I have changed for this chassis, for the V1 right now. And as you can see, the system is way much simpler and easier. That's it, unlocked, place the position you want, and lock again. As easy as that. And now, so it follows the same form function that we have for the arms, for example, when it comes to the modular system. So what more things I have changed? Some of you may have seen that I changed this, the steering rack. Previously, we had a way much complex system which had some arms, as you can see. I don't know if I can move it, but yeah, we have some pretty complex systems and arms, and there were more parts, and the system wasn't as precise, and you even have seen how much play we had with this system. And that is something that now we don't have, at least not as much as in the previous one. And so now we have this rack and gear, rack and pinion system, and it's more precise, and even we gain some bit of steering angle, as you can see. And so the system also has been improved, and now it's way much easier even to install. So one more. One more thing, the servo. The servo now has changed its position because we have this new distribution for the steering rack. We have now the servo more in the center and more to the front. As you can see, you can compare it side by side, the differences, and there's a lot of difference. And this, I mean, the servos are not much heavier, but it makes a difference when it comes to the weight distribution. Probably you are not gonna feel it, but it even looks better. So it's more a function over aesthetics things, but even the aesthetics has been improved. Another thing that we have changed for this new, well, apart from the tolerances for this, for example, for this system, for these sliders to adjust this position, this part, as you can see also, I have made it thicker and way much stronger, and you can see that it's a bit more complex, and there's a reason for that. The reason to make it a bit more complex is so that we can change now the height of the body to chassis height. So now that can be changed on the front and also on the rear. So let's take a look to it, how it works. So this is the connector, the front connector, and as you can see on the previous model, it was entirely fixed in place. You can move it, only slide it front and rear to connect it to the chassis. But now it's the same, but as you can see, it's thicker. Now we have even rails in some sides, so it's better and stronger. And now we can pull off this part, and now we can set which height we want for our car. This middle line is the same height as on the previous chassis, this connector, but if you want more height or less, all you need to do is to slide it through these holes, through the top one or the bottom one. Just leave it in place wherever you want it, and then place this back in. And the thing is that we have more contact surface compared to the previous one. We have more contact surface in this front part, and so this also, I have seen that it gives even more stability to the chassis and to the body. So that was like a 3-in-1 thing. Everything improved. So what more things I have changed for this chassis? Well, I have also added this, the power off switch. Now we have the switch right here in this position with this better looking. And now the thing is that we even have, you can see because there's so much lighting here, but even now you can see through the C, through this letter, you can see when it's on and when it's off. And so this has been all distributed. And also the motherboard of Cyberbrick, the height of the motherboard of Cyberbrick has been increased, because I found that when installing this motherboard, as you can see, it's tilted on this part, and it was because it was hitting some plastic parts of the chassis. And so now I increase also the height, and now it's perfect, it's completely aligned in place, and so no problems right now. Also worth mentioning, on the rear center hubs, as you can see, now these have like a cover in front that is being taken in place by this bolt. Previously we had this designed, and this wasn't quite a good design, even though I released it like this. But there was a big problem that I didn't account for. And the thing is that when testing this chassis, it never happened to me. But when it happened, it started to happen one time after another. And it was that this center hub, as you can see, it's not protected. And so after sometimes pulling off the rims, what happened was that this part came out. And so sometimes while driving, the rims came out, or when trying to release them, the rims came out. Now this is not happening because this center hub, it's been covered by this gray part, and now no matter how much force you make, you can take it out. So now it's stick in place. So the same with the height of the adjustable height for the body to chassis connector. Also, one thing worth mentioning, I have increased the size for these things, which is to adjust the height of the suspension. And in fact, as you can see, this is the difference that I have made right now. This is on the lower position. That means that this is for off-road, and this is more for road, driving. And now these things, these sliders, had been changed so that you can pick them in way much better. The same with the front one. Now it's way much easier to take it off from place. And so if just in case that you want to change the position of the suspension and the height. And as you can see on the previous model, it was way much tiny, and in fact way much harder. I have also fixed the tolerances for this part. In fact, right now I can't even pull it out. I needed some tweakers maybe or something like that. So now the whole thing has been simplified. So what more things I have changed for this chassis? Well, let me plug in this part again into the sport position. There we go. And so I think that's all for now. These are all the updates, as long as I can remember, of this GTR-CS chassis. And probably there will be some few more updates in the coming months, as soon as we have more parts from Maker Supply, like the suspension springs, like the engines maybe. Also, one more thing that I almost forget. Yeah, this is very important. One of the things that people complain the most about this chassis is that they broke these parts when trying to assemble them. The sliders with the lockers, there were some cases where trying to pull them in place, they broke. And as you can see, one of the main differences is that you can see this little small dent that I have designed and make right there, and also on the bottom of it. I don't know if you can see it right there. And this has been made so the parts, so these sliders can be easily installed without breaking them, because some people complain that when installing these parts they broke. And as you can see, now it's easy and the parts don't suffer. Something which previously didn't happen. As you can see here, we have no dent or channels where to guide the parts, and so it was almost very hard to install them, and you will need to make some force. And as you can see right now, I can't. I will need to disarm this part and try to pull the part from the bottom. It was way much harder, and there were some times where even these parts broke because you forced them. And now that has been fixed in all the parts right here. Also, as you can see, I've added these numbers, these serial numbers, so everyone knows in which position each one goes, as you can see. But not only that, now even you have the same code on the arms of the suspension, as you can maybe see here. Also right here on the sliders, but not only that, you also now have that coding into the arms right here. I don't know if you can see it right there. That's the number 2, number 2, and number 2. And so that way everything is more intuitive to assemble. And so now, yeah, now that's all for now. That's GTR-CS v1.1. And so as said, I'm working now on the GTR-CR v1.1. This is how the prototype is looking. It's having some of the main features that the GTR-CS v1.1 has, but even improved. I'm still working on the suspension, mainly the front suspension, because I don't think it's still working as good as I would like. But in a few weeks, probably I will be releasing it with all the new improvements. And also one thing that I'm thinking, I don't know if I will, is to change this steering system and place the system on the GTR-CS. I need to make some more tests. As said, this chassis it gets to 80 kilometers per hour, so every modification you make needs to be more serious and more considered. Also, one thing just to share you that I have installed on this new GT-RCR is that now you can have this pop-up hood, so you can remove the battery easily. But as said, as soon as I have all the components finally made, I will be releasing it on MakerWorld and on YouTube too. Remember that you will have these chassis entirely for free at MakerWorld when it comes to the 3D printed parts. All you need to do is to get the components. So thanks so much for watching. I hope this video solved some of the questions that you may have for operating or not these two Cyberbrick chassis. And so if you have any more questions, let me know in comments and I will read you. And also if you go through MakerWorld, I will be answering to you more questions. But that's all for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching and see you on the next video.